Wade Boggs, Hall of Fame third baseman.
Hall of Fame mustache too, right?
Yeah.
Hall of Fame mustache. Boston, New York. Has 3,000th hit, a home run with Tampa Bay. But when I think of Wade Boggs, I think of two things. I think of how much I hate him because he rode a horse for the Yankees after winning a World Series.
Yeah.
And I think of one of sports' great urban myths of him drinking 64 beers on a cross-country flight from New York to Los Angeles. It's one of the great, like I said, sports myths, urban legends, whatever you want to call them. It sounds insane that someone could do this or would even try to do this. They had it in an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where Charlie Day hallucinates and sees, because they're trying to do it on a flight, and he hallucinates, and Wade Boggs is suddenly sitting next to them, telling him to be a champion and drink more beers. I mean, look, Ryan, you're very open about...
Where's this going? Okay.
You're very open about, things of your past. You're the only person I know who's right here that maybe tried this at one point. Like, is this possible? Could someone drink 64 beers?
I'm an expert. Okay, let's put it that way. That's what my son says now. Anytime he does something well, I say, "Great job." He's like, "I'm an expert, Dad." Hey, I'm an expert. All right, 64 beers. All right, is a lot. I used to play golf when I was drinking, and it was either we were playing to compete and score, or we were playing to drink and play golf, right? Have fun. So that meant usually a beer a hole. In the hot sun, in it, so cold and tastes so good going down Bud Light spot here, everybody. Oh, cold Bud Light on a hot Vegas day in the sunshine, right? And I probably 18 beers and 18 holes, right?
Yeah, but that's over the course of 4 hours. 4.5 hours.
Right. I mean, but to drink a beer, I mean, to pound one beer, I mean, to do that consecutively, you just get bloated and bloated and bloated. To do 64 beers in 6 hours is absolutely insane. I told you guys before, I'd have to, to get me on a horse, I'd have to pound 64 beers, right, to be on a horse after a game. I've never tried it, so I can't speak to like, oh, this is impossible. Maybe he had a hollow leg, right? It just disappeared on him. There are stories of alcoholics who have been able to drink like gallons and gallons of vodka. So, I mean, if someone's got a tendency to overdo it, the funny part about this whole story is, and it was the premise of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, is that they were going to take a crosstown flight, try to drink the 64 beers, sleep on it, and then wake up and go to the batting cages and see if they could hit a ball. Because that's what Wade got up the next morning, probably went 3 for 4.
Yeah, hit 360.
Right? So that's the bigger story. I'd love to, he's embellished the story even more. There's a statement out there that he ended up, that day ended up being around 107 beers.
Yeah, because he drank 60 on the flight, and then when they landed, they went out at night, and then he just kept going.
Yeah.
And then, obviously they played the next day.
Well, it also probably depends on what you're drinking, right? I mean, it's
if you're drinking,
Bud Light or Miller Lite, there's some watered down things. But I mean,
CLs.
That's a lot of booze.
I mean,
that's a lot of booze. All right,
that's like basically a case, a 12-pack an hour.
64.
Oh God, I hydrate like crazy, right? You guys know that. I drink 12 bottles of 17-ounce water during the day, which is around 204 ounces of water every day. That's my average. Some days I'm 230, depends on what I'm doing. Some days I'm 175 or something like that. But that's a lot of water.
The RL16 diet over there.
And the RL16. And when you sit down, like at the end of the day, like when you're done eating around 5 or 6 and you've drank that water all day, and when you sit down, the end of the day is kind of winding down, that's when your body catches up to you. And then like from 6 until 10 o'clock at night, I probably, too much information below. I probably piss like, 15 times from 6 to 10 o'clock. So if somebody's on a flight where you're not moving,
right,
where you're sitting there pummeling, just pounding.
Pounding beers and fried
Pounding
chicken.
beers, doing nothing, just doing 12-ounce curls all the way through the flight with a Hall of Fame mustache and probably having to deal with things with people. You go and you use that restroom. He probably lived in the restroom. I'm surprised he just didn't bring beers to the restroom.
Yeah.
So
To put it in perspective, a mini keg, 14 cans. Cornelius keg, 53 cans. A sixth of a barrel, 56 cans. Quarter barrel, 82. So you're doing like a keg of beer.
So he drank a keg of beer
Like
on a
literally,
flight.
the
question is,
it's like the sixth.
The question is, who kept serving him?
Yeah, where'd the
Exactly.
beer? He had to have brought all of that.
That's the storyline in Always Sunny. They brought their own beers on the flight. So they had like a pillowcase full of just beers.
I mean,
Does that fit in the overhead compartment?
exactly.
And this isn't a show you have watched. You haven't
yeah,
watched Always Sunny.
I
Have you
didn't
guys been
watch
an
Always
Always Sunny fan?
I've watched a few episodes. It's funny. I haven't watched all of them.
Michael?
No. And
So
I should.
during the
'cause I love
pandemic
DeVito.
I rewatched some things. I mean, we were home a ton. I was watching a lot of streaming things. I rewatched the Seinfeld series, which was amazing. I rewatched The Office, which you can get on Peacock, everybody, The Office. Love that. And I started watching Always Sunny from the beginning. And it's so old that it's in the 4x3 framing.
4x3.
Yes.
That's amazing.
That's how old it is. They've done like 17 or 18 seasons.
Yeah.
And Danny DeVito isn't part of the initial group.
Right.
He comes along, and that show, I'll put it on at night when I go to sleep and just kind of fall asleep to it. But sometimes they are so hilarious and so funny that I end up staying up and watching 3 or 4 or 5 episodes going, what's going on here? It's tremendous on how well it's written, and some of the storylines are just outrageous, just absolutely outrageous. And this is one of them where he talks about trying to make the cross country trip of drinking 64 beers and then hitting a fastball. So,
So what? Our final conclusion here is not possible.
final conclusion:
Unlikely?
unless you have a real problem and probably belong in a rehab facility. Not possible. Yeah. He went out and went 3 for 4 the next day. Probably not actually happened. I would go as far as saying he pounded. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe he did 30.
Ripped a 30 pack or something.
Maybe he did. Maybe he did 34.
Yeah.
Even at 64 beers, that would still leave him 92 beers short of Andre the Giant's record of 156 beers in one season.
Andre's the GOAT.
And I believe that.
Yeah, I believe that.
I do believe. That's one of the most amazing photographs of Andre holding a beer can. It looks like one of those just
It looks like I'm watching the Avengers when the Hulk hands Paul Rudd the tacos in his hand, and they're just like these miniature tacos in his hand. When the Hulk hands them to Paul Rudd, they're these huge big tacos in Paul Rudd's hand. Yeah. Ant-Man, clearly that was the perfect juxtaposition. Marvel Universe fans out there. So I'm going to say no.
Okay.
I'm going to say no. We'd love to know your answers, everybody, on whether or not this was actually a possibility. Is it fun to believe it to be true?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's what, the kind of urban myths and urban legends
I do know if I
are
watched
for.
it happen, if I was a witness to it, when we walked off the plane in Los Angeles, I would have grabbed Wade and said, okay, we're going to go get you some help.
We're going to Malibu, and we're
We're going to go to Malibu. I know a place.
Yeah.
I'll see you in 90 days.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.